Hello viewers, it's Josie. Welcome back to Eclectic Movie Reviews. And Earth Day is Friday or Saturday? Let me look it up. Earth Day 2023. Saturday. So, in honor of that, I am going to discuss some movies that I think would be perfect to watch on Earth Day. And I have 12 movies total, though I'm I'm technically it's 10 picks because um um two some are paired as double features. But without further ado, here I go. My first pick is The Edge from 1997, directed by Lee Tamahori, New Zealand director. This is a wilderness survival adventure film starring Sir Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin. A billionaire named Charles Morse, played by Anthony Hopkins, his much younger hot model wife, a photographer named Bob Green, played by Alec Baldwin, and the photographer's assistant, go to a fancy resort in Alaska to do a model photo shoot. And it's very clearly established that Hopkins' character's wife and the photographer are having an affair. And when they decide to take a plane ride one day, Anthony Hopkins sees Alec Baldwin's character kiss his wife on the cheek. It leads to a fight and the plane crashes. And Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin's characters are forced to survive together in the forest until they get back to civilization. And the biggest obstacle is one of the biggest obstacles having to face a Kodiak bear tracking their trails. And it's pretty thrilling, and and the cinematography of the Alaskan wilderness is immersively breathtaking. This was shot by Donald McAlpine, who shot Baz Luhrmann's Moulin Rouge and Romeo and Juliet, in addition to the movies Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger. And I think the most interesting thing about this movie to me is the dynamic between Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin's characters. They have to put aside their jealousy or ill will towards each other, and they're forced to do that to focus on their immediate safety first. And that speaks to David Mamet's script, which is so rich with character depth. So yeah, it's a good survival adventure as well as an interesting character study. Yeah. Now that I think about it, it might be a good pairing with The Lighthouse. Okay. The Edge is available on DVD from that's how I watched it. So see if it's at your library. I don't know if it's on Blu-ray. Like, otherwise, if not your library, get your loan, like I always say. Or you can rent it for a few dollars VOD. Okay, so that's The Edge. Next up, you could call this my sea creature awareness slot. And that's The Secret of Roan Inish from 1994, directed by John Sayles. And John Sayles directed Lone Star, Mate One, and The Brother from Another Planet. It's based off of a novel called The Secret of the Ron Moore Skerry by Rosalie K. Fry, which I recommend. So, in this fantasy adventure tale, a 10-year-old girl named Fiona moves in with her grandparents in a seaside Irish village set specifically in Donegal, Ireland. And Fiona's grandpa tells her stories, And one of the stories is a legend of one of her ancestors marrying a Selkie. For those of you who do not know, a Selkie is a creature from Celtic and Norse mythology. It's a human that can transform into a seal. And years prior, Fiona's baby brother was lost at sea in a boat-like cradle, and it's believed that he was adopted by a seal family. And on the abandoned isle of Roan Inish, Fiona discovers a naked little boy whom she figures out is her long-lost baby brother. And the cinematography at the fishing village and the sea is so sharply pristine. It was shot by Haxel Wexler, who shot The Conversation, Medium Cool, One Floor of the Cuckoo's Nest, and In the Heat of the Night. It's just a charmingly beautiful movie. And the seals in this movie are so cute. It's a good movie to show, especially Irish families, a good way to show your children, to introduce them to Irish folklore and fairy tales, as well as just other forms of film. And beyond a fairy tale, this is a movie about the importance of oral history and storytelling passed down to generations. And it also, could teach kids about having awareness of animals of the sea. And a sad statistic is that several seals and sea lions are hit by boats and, are harmed by fishing, injured from fishing nets. Just overall, Secret of Roan Inish is one of those old family movies that have that magical feeling, if you know what I mean. So it's available to watch on Amazon Prime, YouTube, Tubi, and Plex. Okay, moving forward, jumping to a goofy comedy from 2004 called Without a Paddle. Three best friends named Tom, played by Dax Shepard, Jerry, played by Matthew Lillard, and Dan, played by Seth Green. They go on a camping trip together. They had a friend named Billy, who earlier film is actually played by Anthony Starr from The Boys, Homelander himself. So, Billy died at a young age, and so the intention behind their camping trip is to find the treasure at a campsite that Billy said a hijacker left money at. And after a canoeing incident, the three friends have to survive in the wilderness, and the scenarios they get themselves into are pretty hilarious. Similar to The Edge, they're under the threat of a bear, and they meet these hippie girls who believe they can talk to spirits of the forest, and all sorts of crazy stuff. Yeah, it's a ridiculous movie, but the greenery here is actually quite beautiful, and it's also a good story about coming of age as adults. Without a Paddle is available to watch on Paramount Plus. My next pick, this is one of those double feature things. I'm talking about two indigenous stories they're docufiction pieces from the silent era. First one being In the Land of the Headhunters from 1914, directed by Edward S. Curtis. As I said, this is a silent docufiction film that mixes mythology and history regarding the Kwakiutl. They have a really hard name to pronounce. I don't know if I should bother because I'll just mispronounce. So the indigenous people of the Pacific Northwest. And it was the first feature film that included a cast of entirely of indigenous people. This was before Robert Flaherty's Nanook of the North. Edward S. Curtis was a renowned American ethnologist and photographer. He lived in the Pacific Northwest and learned a lot about these cultures through the late 1800s. And the story follows a chief's son, Matana, who falls in love with a gorgeous maiden named Nada. In order for their union to take place, he must surmount to her evil sorcerer father. And the sets in this movie are actually pretty impressive. They built a village on a deer island, and they used canoes that were practically obsolete. And in that group, in that culture. And it's amazing how back then they were able to film the indigenous Pacific Northwesterners engaging in customs such as mask dancing, which were illegal at the time of the Canadian political regime, if you will. And this is a good introductory film for those discovering the silent era because it's basically like an action romance film. While the story is quote unquote legendary, it's historical documentation. And then the pairing, if you will, the other the counterpart to this is Moana from 1926, not the 2016 animated Moana, but another film called Moana, and what's directed by Robert J. Flaherty and his wife Frances Flaherty. And just like Nanook of the North, this is a docufiction film, this time depicting a Samoan family in the 1920s. And what's funny is that the titular character is actually a guy whose name is Moana, not a woman. And we learn about the customs of a group of South Seas indigenous people called the Savai. Again, forgive me. There are a lot of interesting little vignettes here. We mostly see their everyday tasks, including carving, hunting, and fishing. There's one where Moana's younger brother climbs a tree, and you worry if he's gonna fall off. And we see dancing, we see a tattoo ritual, a tradition that was pretty much obsolete within those communities, I believe, by the time of this film's making. So they staged one specifically for the movie here. Overall, what Mr. and Mrs. Flaherty observe here through the camera is quite relaxing to watch. This is especially the case because our subjects have passion and gratitude for their daily lives, even when facing challenges. It's filmed with this tone of optimism. Moana is available to watch on Kanopy and YouTube. Next up is Koyaanisqatsi from 1982, directed by Godfrey Reggio. This is an experimental, non-narrative documentary juxtaposing advancing urban tech life with the beauty of nature. The title is taken from a Hopi term referring to the world out of balance. The first half focuses on the technology advancing modern civilization, whereas the second half focuses more on expansive landscapes. And as far as the editing, the first half is very fast-paced with lots of cuts, as like what they say in the beginning of The Player. For those of you who've seen The Player know what I'm talking about. Through this stylistic choice, you feel the people rushing in the rat race of city life, if that makes sense. And the very thing that is keeping, as the title Koyaanisqatsi suggests, world out of balance. And so the second half, on the other hand, is much slower paced. Not only do the images not cut away so quickly, but the music is calmer and slows down. And it really annoys me when people online define editing as just a bunch of cuts when they clearly do not know what editing actually is. And editing is also knowing not when to cut. And the second half of the film is a good exemplification of this. I like to consider, in a way, the nature doc version of Fantasia, in that it uses music and imagery to tell the story. The music here is beautiful. It's composed by Philip Glass. All in all, Koyaanisqatsi is a very transportive film that will make you want to slow down and appreciate the outdoors. The film has 2 sequels, Powakatsi and Nakokatsi, which I have yet to see. Together they are called the Katsi Trilogy. All three are available to watch on Tubi and Pluto TV. Koyaanisqatsi is also on YouTube. There is a Criterion Blu-ray of it as well, and there's a Blu-ray box set of the whole Katsi Trilogy. So yeah, moving forward, next I'm gonna talk about The Cosmic Eye from 1986, directed by John and Faith Hubley. Now, John and Faith Hubley were a husband and wife animation team. They made an educational animated movie called Upstars and Men. And Upstars and Men basically like talks about like the origins of the universe and their and the purpose of human beings as a species, you know, all that stuff. But in the Cosmic, they also made quite a few animated shorts. In The Cosmic Eye, 3 alien musicians visit planet Earth and intend to bring peace. And then it sort of becomes an anthology of diverse cultural myths and the history of humanity. And what's interesting is how it tackles existential ideas of both human progress and pitfalls. And Mother Earth and Father Time are key characters in the narrative, and the illustrations of the natural world as well as the character designs are abstractly expressionistic, to say the least. And somebody on Letterboxd called it a stoned art history major's wet dream. And despite the existential philosophies explored, the Cosmic Eye actually has quite a mindless documentary feel to it. It's actually surprisingly relaxing. I think that's because the artistic intentions behind Mr. and Mrs. Hubley are rooted in optimism. And I think that's a similar case with Of Stars and Men. Like, even Of Stars and Men, even though, you know, it's meant to teach kids, you know, it's like a scientific educational thing, is pretty digestible, surprisingly. And this is too. And then next up, I'm going with Pom Poko from 1994, directed by Isao Takahata, who directed Grave of the Fireflies and Only Yesterday. And his name will come up later. So, when the forest meadows belonging to the shape-shifting raccoons of Tama Hills face threats by construction developments, it is up to these magical raccoons to prevent such work being done. The ways they go about their fighting back are pretty hysterical, most notably their shape-shifting into humans. We see their whole training process of transformation. And what's cool about this movie is that it's told in like a semi-documentary style. And what I find interesting is the generational gaps as far as opinions regarding what to do as far like facing the humans. And their leader, Ganta, believes that the raccoons, who I think is voiced by Clancy Brown. Okay, Pom Poko. English cast. English voice actors. Yes, voiced by Clancy Brown in the English dub. Where was I? So, their leader Ganta believes that the raccoons should fight back violently, whereas younger Shokichi does not want to use violence. It's not a black and white scenario where the animals are good and the humans are evil. It's a little more nuanced than that. The film even suggests some ways human industrialization could be accommodating to the environment. But beyond the environmentalism versus industrialization debate, you can also look at the film as an allegory for clashing communities and tribalism. We know from history and the news today that in those scenarios, war and violence is never the answer. The emotional anchor of of the movie is the teamwork and the love/community that the raccoons have for one another. Pom Poko is another gem from Studio Ghibli, available to watch on HBO Max. And next up, here is another double feature called Double Forest feature. First one is The Enchanted Forest from 1986. This is a Croatian animated musical. The story follows a painter who spends time in the woodlands for artistic inspiration. Under an elm tree, he falls asleep, and the painter comes across the realization that he has the ability to communicate with the friendly forest animals. These creatures, however, are in danger, for the evil Cactus King is organizing an army of advanced weaponry threatening the forest. His intention is to re-establish the forest as a land where cactus rule the grounds. In order to defeat the Cactus King, the artist forms a team including 3 hedgehog brothers, a strong bear, an intelligent beaver, and more. The main clock, if you will, of the story is that our heroes must protect is the titular elm tree. Inside is the spirit of the forest. If the tree is cut down by the Cactus King's weaponry, the forest dies along with it. And this movie is absolutely adorable. It's a good alternative to watch with your children other than just Disney. More importantly, it teaches kids that they can get creative inspiration from nature just like our painter protagonist. It's also a good anti-war film to show children because it illustrates the damages that military weaponry has on the environment. The Enchanted Forest is available to watch on YouTube, and yes, it is dubbed in English. And next up is Once Upon a Forest from 1993. This is a childhood favorite of mine. It's an underrated one. It's an animated movie distributed by Fox when they had their own animation division, putting out films like Fern Gully and Anastasia. It was produced by Hanna-Barbera. This one's also similar to Enchanted Forest, also sort of a musical. In a forest community called Dapplewood, there are 4 close fur friends referred to as the Furlings. A mouse named Abigail, a hedgehog named Russell, a mole named Edgar, and a badger named Michelle, who's actually voiced by Elizabeth Moss. Their school teacher is Michelle's wise Uncle Cornelius, voiced by Michael Crawford. One day, Cornelius takes the Furlings on a field trip, and the Furlings first set eyes on a street. Russell practically gets hit by a car, and the driver of that car throws a glass bottle out the window, which inevitably breaks. As a result of this shattered bottle, the tire of a tanker truck is busted, causing an accident and a poison gas emission. Michelle and her parents get sick after breathing in the chemicals. Cornelius sets Abigail, Russell, and Edgar on a quest to retrieve medicine to revive Michelle. And the trio pass through a series of dangerous high-stakes settings. It's an adventure story of friendship, perseverance, and bravery. And you know what I about the whole it being high stakes, I feel like kid movies today are really safe, and like they don't allow their characters to get into the most dangerous of dangers, and in this film they really do. Additionally, Once Upon a Forest teaches humans to become more conscious of what we do with our trash and the chemicals we use. And, that could be said for Pom Poko as well. And, the humans, we don't really see the humans in Once Upon a Forest. But we don't, but, it's not, so, I don't know if we can consider them real villains per se. It's more the actions that they're taking that are setting that are establishing the conflict. And with to refer back to Pom Poko, it's yeah, there's there's greed by the humans, but like we see like some like greedy ones in power as far as like construction development, but uh not we don't see all of them portrayed at like that. But anyway, back to Once Upon a Forest. Uh the environmental message turned critics off at the time when it was released, but I feel like the film is more focused on being a survival story and a hero's journey than it is with preaching a message. Sure, it has the environmental message, but like I said, uh, it's a story. It's a story of friendship and survival. Uh, Once Upon a Forest is on DVD, but I don't know how many DVD copies there are of it exist, or if any libraries have it. Otherwise, you can rent it for a couple dollars on Amazon Prime and YouTube. Since Disney owned Fox, this should really be on Disney Plus. If you're hearing me, Disney, take notes. Okay, moving forward. Now, this is a toy animation double feature, which is perfect because I got my One Piece shirt on. Here's Luffy. So, first, Little Prince and the Eight-Headed Dragon. This is from 1963, directed by Yugo Tsurakawa. Toei Animation is the studio behind One Piece. So, as far as the story, after Prince Susanu's mother dies, he sets afoot to try to find her in the special place she went to that his father told him about. His father, however, does not want him to go on such a journey. Susanu does anyway. Joining his quest is his rabbit, Akahana, and a friendly giant named Titanbu. Through the way, Susanu succeeds trial after trial. He enters the Izumo province, home to Princess Kushinada, whom he befriends. She tells him about an evil serpent called the Yamata no Orochi. The other 7 sisters of her family were sacrificed to this creature, thereby making it the 8-headed dragon. Then comes his ultimate test, confronting the dragon. This is a super entertaining and inspiring gem from Toei Animation, a hero's journey for sure. And it was a big influence on the show Samurai Jack. So the color palette here and the scenery of nature, though fantastical, of course, is beautiful. It looks like it was ripped out of a mythological storybook. The film doesn't have any clear, explicit environmental messages, but I still consider it an Earth Day movie because Susanu's connection with the rabbit, his approaching and taming of the tiger, and later his befriending of the raccoon are all stepping stones for his personal growth and healing. Little Prince and the Eight-Headed Dragon is available to watch on YouTube. And then next up with the continuing the Toei Animation double is Horus, Prince of the Sun, aka Little Norse Prince, from 1968. This was the directorial debut of Hisao Takahata, and Hayao Miyazaki was actually an animator on this movie, and which sparked their 50-year partnership. Set in mythical Iron Age Scandinavia, a young boy named Horus pulls the magical Sword of the Sun from Moog, the rock giant. Moog tells him that upon the sword's reforging, that he will take on the title Prince of the Sun. And as Horus's father is on the verge of death, he reveals to him the truth of his familial origins. It turns out that they came from a seaside village of the north that was conquered by an evil ice demon named Grunwald. Horus's father's assignment is for him to give back the sword to its ancient territory of origin and bring justice to the village. On his expedition, Horus and his bear friend Koro come across a local village, and after initial hesitation, Horus earns their trust and he befriends a mystifying girl named Hilda, who harbors a secret. Certainly, this has influences of Norse mythology, while also maintaining sensibilities of Japanese fairy tales and folklore. While There are evil wolves and rats in cahoots with the villainous ice wizard, and Horace fights a pike. I still would argue that this film embraces the power of nature. Not only is the artwork of the Scandinavian land gorgeous, but Horace has a reliable bear friend, and there's a friendly talking squirrel whom Hilda communicates with. I believe it's a squirrel. And similar to the protagonist of Little Prince, a lot of Horace's powers and strength is a result of him connecting with the natural world, whether that be confiding with Koro, Moog, or the squirrel, or accessing the power of the sun, since he is, after all, Prince of the Sun. Little Horace, Prince of the Sun, aka Little Horse Prince, is not available to stream anywhere, unfortunately, but you can get it on DVD. Crunchyroll, put this on the service for people to watch. It's toy animation after all. And finally, talking about Atanarjwant, the Fast Runner from 2001, directed by Zacharias Kunuk. This is a depiction of Inuit life in the Arctic mixed with mythological elements, similar to in the Land of the Headhunters. The Fast Runner is actually the first movie written and directed by an Inuit director and starring Inuit actors. It is also the first movie spoken in the Inuktitut language, and it's amazing! It tells the legend of a warrior named Atanarjwant. The story follows him as he protects his family and community going up against an evil spirit and his followers. The movie opens with a flashback where Atanarjwant's community is paid a visit by a shaman named Tungajwak. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing. Forgive me. A spiritual duel results in the death of Kumaglok, the community leader. Tungajwak takes Kumaglok's walrus tooth necklace and passes it down to Sori, who later takes the leadership position. Basically, the magic of this shaman casts a curse upon the community. Tulugmak, whom we met in the flashback, now has a son named Atanarjwant. He, as the title suggests, is a fast runner. Sori has a son named Oki, and Atanarjwant and his brother Amakdwak have a rivalric relationship with Sori and Oki. And Atanarjwant falls in love with a woman named Atuat, and in a game of wolf tag, Atanarjwant and Oki go head-to-head, and Atanarjwant wins the affection of Atuat. Meanwhile, Oki's sister Ilpuja is infatuated with Atanarjwant, and she tries manipulating him. Then a whole chain of events follow. Kunuk's research was basically interviewing the Inuit elders about stories and legends they believed. And that's probably why the storytelling here feels so authentic. And in an interview, I believe Zacharias Kunuk stated that the characters in the film speak baby talk in Inuktitut compared to the elders. And the lines between fiction and documentary are blurred with how authentic it feels. It's almost filmed like a nature documentary at times. And that's not a knock on the film. I actually think that that's one of the best things about it. The Arctic scenery here is astounding. It's spiritual, transportive, the story, and romantic, Shakespearean, and inspiring. The actors here give fantastic performances, especially the lead, Natar Ungolak, who is a pretty accomplished Inuit actor and sculptor. And it is just so incredible that Zacharias Kunuk overcame the odds and had the opportunity to make such an epic film like this, especially since it was not easy to make or finance. The Fast Runner is available on DVD, but I don't think it's available at many libraries, so you'll most definitely have to get an interloan. It's available to rent and purchase for a few bucks on Apple TV. There's some boutique label out there. Criterion, Kino Lorber, Arrow Academy, Indicator, Umbrella Entertainment, or even Radiance. Somebody put this out there because it is an essential Canadian classic that should not be lost. In fact, some consider it to be the best Canadian film ever made. And so, yeah, that concludes my Earth Day movie recommendations. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to check out more of my videos, then click the like button and subscribe, and the links to my socials are in the description below. Thanks for watching. Happy Earth Day. Goodbye for now.